Hello, my name is Joel Christ. I'm a developer with Acona Systems, and today I'm going to do a walkthrough of the process of customizing the page editing toolbar components in SharePoint Server 2007. Today we're going to be customizing the page editing toolbar components in two ways. The first is to add a custom menu to the page editing menu, and the second will be to add a quick access button to the page editing toolbar. Now the first customization we're going to make is going to make use of SharePoint Designer 2007. So I currently have my SharePoint site open in SharePoint Designer. I'm going to come down here and navigate under the Catalogs folder to the Master Page folder, and in there in the Editing Menu folder. And I'm going to go ahead and check out and edit this custom editing menu.xml file. And then we're going to replace this file contents with our own. So the markup in here will be used then by the page editing toolbar to determine how to customize the page editing menu rather. So what we're doing in here is we've added some markup that's going to add a top level links menu item, and under that links menu item we're going to have a view pages library that will take us to the pages library, and a view master page gallery that will take us to the master page gallery. So I'm going to go ahead now and save my changes. Okay, now if we come back over here and we refresh, we now see that we now have a links menu item. And if I click on that, I've got my two sub-menu items, view pages library, that if I click on, it takes me to the pages library. Navigate back. And if I click on the view master page gallery, it takes me to the master page gallery. So it looks like our menus are working just fine. So that's the first customization type. And the second type of customization that we're going to create, which will involve creating a quick access button to go here on the page editing toolbar, is going to involve using Microsoft Visual Studio 2005. So we're going to create a class library project here using C#, and we're going to name it Page Editing Toolbar Controls. Okay, now we're going to come in here in the Solution Explorer, rename our file here for our source code, just to keep things tidy, call it discard or the user checkout action. So what our button is going to allow us to do is to discard the checkout of another user on a given page. So the first thing we need to do is come in here and add some references to the required SharePoint assembly. So we're going to come down here and say add reference. And the first one we're looking for is the Microsoft Content Publishing and Management component. And then we need to come down here and also add a reference to system.web as well as SharePoint services and say OK. Okay, so Visual Studio has now added the required references. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here and choose to strong name sign our assembly so that we can deploy it to the global assembly cache. So if I come in here on the properties page and come down to the signing tab, select to sign the assembly, choose new, specify a name for the key file. Okay, now that we've added the necessary references and strong name signed our assembly, the next step is to replace the Visual Studio generated code with our own. Go take a look at what we've got going on here. We're pulling in some of the SharePoint publishing related namespaces, specifically the web control set editing menu actions namespace, and the publishing.web controls namespaces, as well as some of the SharePoint namespaces here for the utilities so that we can undo a checkout of a page when the user clicks on our button, on our quick access button. So we come in here then and we notice now that our class is derived from the console action, the web controls editing menu actions, console action class. We come in here and the first thing we override is the user rights property, and that allows us then to return that we require the cancel checkout permission in order to use this action. We also then specify the required states property here. The required states, in order for the button to be enabled, we require that there is a checked out version of the page. We also require that the user who the page is checked out to is not the current user. And then we come back here and we override the raise post back event. This is what's going to define our behavior when the button is clicked. So we come in here and we check to see if the event argument is our event. Discard checkout post back event argument. We define that down below down here. When we override the navigate URL property right here and return our string that we define down here, discard user checkout. So if our button gets clicked on, then and it is our event, we go ahead and get an SP file for the current file or the current page, and then we do an undo checkout on the page. There's an error, we catch the exception and go ahead and display it. And finally, we go ahead and do a redirect here. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to build the code. Okay, and it looks like the build succeeded just fine. Okay, now that we've successfully built our assembly, the next step is to deploy it to our SharePoint site. So the first thing I'm going to do is to come in here, and in SharePoint Designer again, we're going to now choose to edit the custom quick-access.xml file. And yes, we're going to check it out. And this is a file that the page editing toolbar looks at to figure out how to customize the quick access buttons on the toolbar. So we're going to go ahead and add some of our own markup here, and we're going to add an assembly, or rather a reference element here, tag that's going to specify our assembly that implements our quick access button. And so we've got our assembly name, got a public key token value here. I got that by running the strong name tool with the capital T option here against my assembly, and that returns then the the public key token for the assembly. And we come down here, and this is where we actually specify then the console node, or rather the button that we want to have, the quick access button we want to have added to the toolbar. And so we use our tag that we defined up above here, and then we specify our class name that implements our quick access button, set the display text on the button, the image URL, the image file to use for the button, and we assign it an ID as well. So let's go ahead now and check in our changes. We'll go ahead and approve in a little bit. Okay, so now the next step is to actually deploy the assembly to the global assembly cache. And so I've got my assembly right here. I'm going to drag it into the global assembly cache. And it looks like that's done and succeeded. We can take a look. And we got our page editing toolbar controls assembly now in the global assembly cache. And then the last step in deploying is to edit the web.config file for our site. I've gone ahead and done that. Oops. So if we come in here and we take a look at the web.config file, I've got a safe controls entry that I've added in here for my assembly. If we take a look into the safe control section, I've got page editing toolbar controls specified here, and we're specifying the public key token, the namespace of page editing toolbar controls, and our type name here of discard of the user checkout action, specifying that it's safe. Okay, now the last thing we're going to do in here now is reset IIS, so it'll pick up our changes. Okay, so we have reset the server now. Okay, now that we've gone ahead and deployed our assembly, let's go ahead and go back over to our SharePoint site and test this out. So the first thing I'm going to do is to come back in here in the site content and structure page, and in the master page gallery in the editing menu folder, I'm going to go ahead and approve the pending changes to my custom quick access. Keep it simple. Say OK. Okay, now while we're in here, if I look at the pages for my site, I've got the default.aspx page. You can see it's currently checked out to test user. I'm currently logged in as administrator on here. So there's another user who has default.aspx checked out. So if I come out here and go ahead and click on edit page. I now get a discard checkout button available to me. It warns me that the page is already checked out by test user, but now we get my quick access button visible here saying discard checkout. If I go ahead and click on that, that should go ahead and discard the checkout by the other user. If we come back over here now and do a refresh, we can now see that the page is no longer checked out to the other user. If I come back over here now and kick the page into edit mode, I can now successfully go into edit mode on the page. So it looks like the discard checkout worked just fine. So we were able to successfully customize the components of the page editing toolbar using two different techniques. The first was to add a custom menu to the page editing menu by editing the custom editing menu.xml file in SharePoint Designer. And the second approach we took was to implement a class library in Visual Studio that provided a class derived from the SharePoint console action class that allowed us to add a custom quick access button to the page editing toolbar.